Well, this is Brian O'Hearn, getting things done. We still don't have the audit last year that was due towards the end of December 2010. Here we are in April, we still don't have the audit. I think the holdup is in getting information from the education system, Board of Education. I want to say right up front that Jay Buttigieg will be moving starting next week. He'll be on the same time this week, but next week he'll be moving to Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. And I have agreed to move my program to 8 p.m. to help facilitate Jay. He travels a lot around the country, around the state, around the area. So it's good if he can do both his programs at one time. So good luck, Jay. And for all of you who watch this program, and there are more and more all the time from what I hear in the feedback, next week I'll be starting at 8 p.m. We'll go until further notice, 8 p.m. Wednesday night. Well, the four sensible and very wise selectmen, Ken Fracasso, Glenn Albanesius, Karen Beadle, and Lisa Smith, have prevailed again, as they have in the past, on other major issues important to the town: cost and revenue management and other issues during the current administration. They're pretty much the leaders on this board. They kind of always tend to do the right things. The other two always tend to want to do the wrong things for some reason. I admire, in some respects, the people who get things done, no matter what party they're in. I'm an independent, as you know, unaffiliated, not a member of any of the political parties, have been all my life. And once in a while they get the help of Selectman Renzullo when it comes to revenue and cost savings and other issues of importance. But they almost never get the help with the mayor or Selectman Clausen, because they have different management philosophies. The mayor, as you know, is an educator, doesn't have much experience in business that I know of. And we are running a business here in this town, and we're in trouble now. So we have to be more entrepreneurial than we're used to, and then we have the experience to be. I find the latest temporary town manager, Paul Vare, refreshing, because he has an entrepreneurial spirit still for a man his age, and is very, very interested in the growth and the future of Winston. I'm hoping the new town manager will follow his example. Now, Ralph Nader and I almost never agree. I have a different experience than he has. I respect him for the work he did with the airbags, and I respect him for the work he did with all the seat belts and things like that, and most of the world does. But when it comes to the issues in the local area, we don't see eye to eye at all, although I'm sure I could carry on an intelligent conversation with him. Some of these extreme environmentalists that follow Ralph Nader, like the mayor and Clausen and people like that, it's hard to talk to them. They either love you or hate you. In business, you can't love or hate anybody. If your business is in trouble and you're really trying hard, and your worst enemy comes in and wants to spend $1 million to buy your product, you'll probably find a way to do it and say yes and swallow your pride. After the wise selectmen and their supporters were being hammered by the Nader-backed conservative extremists from Winchester and the east side of Wakefield Boulevard for weeks and weeks, in various comments in newspapers, articles, editorials, the blogs. The four sensible selectmen received a great deal of support from the community on April 7th, 2011, at the town meeting concerning the sale of conservation rights to town-owned land that the Winchester Land Trust wanted to buy with state money from a state grant. The Winchester Land Trust once again had another opportunity to convince the community last week, April 7th, Thursday night, 7 o'clock, as a result of a petition raised by the few supporters of their effort to obtain rights to 360 acres of town land. 356 acres surrounding the Crystal Lake Reservoir, where our water supply comes from, and 4 acres on East Wakefield Boulevard in the area of land owned by a minority of extreme conservation leaders on the east side of Highland Lake. The Land Trust lost for the third time, despite a humongous last-minute effort to rally the 346 or so people that they needed to vote in favor of passing the matter back to the selectmen for consideration once again. Of the 6,912 voters in town eligible to attend the meeting and vote, 346 or 5% of those eligible were needed, with the majority voting in favor of returning the question to the selectmen for reconsideration. Only 233 or 3.4% or so voters turned up for the meeting. This was not enough to make the meeting quorum or the meeting a success. The final vote was 213 to 13. 213 in favor, because most of the people in favor did show up for the meeting, and 13 against, because most of the people that were against, which was the majority of the town, as I understand it from talking to people, were the no voters. And they didn't bother to attend, as it might have prejudiced their case. So, out of 912 voters, 233 showed up, and the 213 were in favor of the sale to the Land Trust, and the rest of the town probably wasn't. So that was about 3.4%, 233 that showed up. You need 5% to have a quorum, and that 5% must vote either yes or no, and then whoever has the majority wins. To get the meager amount, 233 voters, the supporters of the sale of the land to the Winchester Land Trust made what I consider to be a Herculean attempt to get enough voters to attend the meeting by several methods. Number one, there was a campaign of letter, blog, and newspaper articles that was conducted over the months preceding this meeting. Sometimes when I read these newspapers and the blogs and the articles and the editorials, I get the sense that the 3 newspapers in the area are very liberal and always support these conservationists. And I think it's because these conservationists have a good rapport with these newspapers, spend a lot of time. They're mostly retired people, school teachers, people with a lot of time on their hands that can spend. Most of the other people have no time to spend on these kind of activities, courting newspapers and things because they're busy working all the time, earning a living, trying to make it through tough times, get their kids through college. You know, I know people now that have 2 or 3 kids in college during these tough times. The second thing was a widely distributed mailer was sent to all possible supporters requesting attendance at the meeting on April 7th, 2011. I don't know how many people received these mailers, but I know they went to a lot of people indiscriminately that were not at all interested in this proposal, and they went to some people that were interested. The mayor attempted, but failed, to call a budget hearing meeting on the same night at the same location, perhaps to try to get a few more people to attend the public hearing, town meeting. The superintendent of schools somehow notified parents of an education-focused public meeting, public hearing, on the same night at the same place. Again, probably, not for sure for certain, but probably to try to get more people in to vote for this sale because it would mean more money for the town coffers. It wouldn't be recurring money. It wouldn't happen again. It might not be enough money. My own view is we were probably selling that land and the rights to the land forever for a very, very inexpensive price. And we do know that when the state got involved in our Main Street after the flood, we lost a lot of flexibility down there. When the state got involved in the sale of the land at the lake, where now they have the boat launch, we lost a lot of flexibility there that now most of the lake leaders are not happy with. I once told my wife that I would like to name our new bungalow Forever. And she said, "Brian, nothing is forever." I'm sure she was right. A notice was placed in the window of one of the local taverns offering refreshments before the vote, probably to encourage people to come and vote. Seems a little dicey to me. But you know, I guess I have reports that it was done. I also noticed that the Green Room, which is a very nice little restaurant in town that serves more or less modern food there, health food in its restaurant, was also trying to round up people to come down there for dinner or a drink or a refreshment of one sort or another and then go off to vote. They're nice people, and they were probably just trying to help these conservationists in their effort to put the land in the land trust. An old political trick of delaying the beginning of the meeting 20 minutes or so, a meeting that started till at 7:20 or more when it was supposed to start at 7. I've seen this trick applied in this town many times by the same people that did it last week. They delayed the meeting 20 minutes in an attempt to conjure up more participants at the last meeting. I can just see them all texting and calling on their cell phones. Often when people go to a meeting in this town to speak, as Ralph Nader wants us to do, the people that are at the meeting, some of them are selectmen, some of them are Board of Education meetings, they immediately get on their cell phones and tweet and twixt and do all that kind of thing to try to get some counterbalance down to the meeting as soon as possible if it's available in town. So there's a lot happening in real time here that you're perhaps not aware of and probably never saw happen before the age of these rapid mass communications that we have. At the beginning of the meeting, the sparse attendance figures, you can tell right away if there's not going to be enough people to make the quorum. The sparse attendance figures were given out at the meeting perhaps hoping that attendees would call friends on their cell phones or text them, friends, family, and other supporters, hoping that any of the same watching from home, if it was on television, I'm not sure it was or not, would run down and attend the meeting, knowing that they didn't have enough people to make a quorum. So when politicians get involved in these, especially conversationalists, extreme conservationists, they got a lot of tricks up their sleeve. They'll try anything to make their case. Now, there were some other tactics during the meeting once the people realized that they were going to lose. At the meeting, an influential supporter called for a motion to change the form of the Selectmen's February 22nd motion and to affirmatively accept the proposal. Little jiggery-pokery there. This request, thankfully, was denied by the town attorney, Kevin Nelligan. At the meeting, another enthusiastic supporter, perhaps an over-enthusiastic supporter, sought to broaden the scope of the town meeting. This request was also denied by the town attorney, Kevin Nelligan, probably because it's against the charter to do so. I'm not positive there, but sure the town attorney, Kevin Nelligan, had a good reason to stop that. Seeing the meager turnout, the mayor wanted to suspend, skip, or not hold the town meeting for one reason or another. Perhaps she was just not interested in conducting the town's business. She's often in a hurry to leave meetings or rise late at meetings. I've noticed that over the years. I always make it a point to try to be on time for meetings. I traveled the world and never missed an airplane and never forgot my passport or airplane ticket. 10 million miles traveled throughout my career. And she might have had somewhere else. She's a busy lady. Probably had somewhere else she'd rather be. I do think that this job's perhaps too much for her, and she's not really up to it. And if you're not up to it and you don't have the experience, it's that much more difficult. She's very good at what I called the mayoral ceremonial aspects, greeting children, going to the graveyard, talking to people when they receive awards. She's good at that. And that falls more in line with things they do in boards of education. I see that when I go to the Board of Education meetings. The Board of Education members light up when they see children and they give awards. They love that. They crawl into a hole when they have to make a decision about money or financial matters. They don't like that too well. And it's tough to get a decision out of them when it comes to that. But if it's giving an award to a child, they'll make that decision in too sweet right off the bat. No problem. We don't need to think about that. Or perhaps she did not want to bother to vote if no chance to win. You kind of get dejected. All that work to push for the meeting and then nobody shows up to vote. Kind of depressing for anybody. Or perhaps she wanted to leave a technical reason for trying to reopen the meeting, because she's an avid, extreme environmentalist, at a later date, when it could be convened at a more advantageous time for her and her followers and supporters and the Nader supporters. A Saturday, for example. Now, I do remember in the last administration, when the Republicans wanted to sell some land at the lake, etc., the people that are in the majority now always push for a meeting during the week because they wanted to defeat the motion. They didn't want it on a Saturday when it was against their wishes. Only when it's in their favor. Do they want to have it on a Saturday when more people may or may not show up to vote? I don't think particularly it would have done any good on this one anyway, but you never know. People are funny. Again, town attorney Kevin Nelligan insisted that the meeting proceed, even though they had a meager amount of people. And that a machine vote, not a hand-raising vote, waving little cards in the air that they do sometimes, but that a machine vote be taken to record the turnout and the decision of the attendees. A person rumored to have a financial interest one way or another, and this may be true or false, it's a strong rumor that you see in the papers, in the blogs, around the town, everybody's talking about it. Well, this person is rumored to have a financial interest one way or another in the outcome of the vote, and has been campaigning for the sale of the rights to these lands for the last few months. At the meeting, the person stood up and spoke about the scheme, and again did not disclose, to the best of my knowledge, the possible significant benefits that he would be receiving from the sale of this land to the land trust. And there are even wider rumors spreading that perhaps he was going to use his proceeds to help the land trust in their time of financial need, if that's true. Despite the dismal reports of the meeting, and there remain questions about this sale of town-owned rights to town-owned property to the Winchester Land Trust, there remain several outstanding important questions. What are all the conditions to be imposed by the state of Connecticut? We don't know. One person in another town that told me, whenever you get involved with the state and you accept a grant of $500,000, there's a long list of conditions that will apply. It will be nice to know what all those conditions are before anybody agrees to sell land to the Winchester Land Trust with state money involved. We know. We've been involved in that kind of situation before. It always seems rosy when you first start, and then usually you wish you'd never done it because of all the bureaucracy. We had, I think, that kind of problem when we did the industrial parks too. There's still some dissatisfaction about the way that all was handled by the state and with the state. Exactly how much of a stewardship fee will a Winchester Land Trust receive? That hasn't been finally determined, to the best of my knowledge. Have they disclosed all the conditions of the arrangement and all of the benefactors of the sale? This seems questionable. People are concerned about that and would like to know the answers before they vote, not after they vote. We don't want it to be like the Obama medical plan. 10 million pages, you'll find out what's in there after you approve the plan. You know what happened there. Got approved. Most people still don't know what the circumstances will be over time. And they might find out when it's too late. Hence you have a lot of distrust of that plan and this one. Have they made full disclosure of the information concerning the sale to the public? Is there a conflict of interest? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know, but there's a lot of concern whether there's a conflict of interest between Selectman George Clausen, a voter for and possible lobbyist in support of the sale, and his wife, Susan Clausen's membership on the Winchester Land Trust Board of Directors. Some think that there may be conflict here, or at least it doesn't look good. Maybe he should have recused himself, maybe not. That could be argued for years in the courts of law and cost people a lot of money, so I don't think we'll hear much more about that. But it is a question, and it doesn't help the case any to have those kind of questions floating around in the air. So what happens next? There have been reported threats of a lawsuit by at least one of the supporters of the sale, I'm told. And reports of the Winchester Land Trust's intention to proceed with a non-town part or parts of the deal, if possible, with the state. Let's all wish them luck. We're not poor losers. Let's all wish them luck and get on with much more important matters. We wasted a lot of time on this issue at a time when we don't have time, and at a time when we need to be concentrating on other issues such as cost management in the educational system, 65% of our budget, maybe more as the educational costs rise and the town costs are reduced. So we need to spend more time on those issues, especially George Clausen. He should be spending more time, and Mayor Perez, on these issues. And they're not. They're spending more time on things like this land trust sale than perhaps they should be, in my opinion. So we got to pay more attention to this budget. And on the second part of this program tonight, I'll be talking more about this budget, and I'm going to get some very concrete information out. And while you're watching the second half of this program, or maybe I'll have already been there, I'm going to go to the Selectmen special meeting tonight, and I'm going to go over with them the same thing I'm going to go over with you now, and hope that I can get my message across, as Ralph Nader has advised us all to do. And I'm going to take him literally at his word. I'm going down there tonight. I'm going to have a chat with him. I'll report on it next week. I'll tell you what happened. As you see this picture of a dove on the screen, tonight I will hand out a letter from our former town manager that was basically picked by the majority in this administration, and then probably left after 10 months because of micromanagement by members of this majority in this administration. He was very much liked by the town. Everybody thought he was going to be a good town manager. He's a local man, grew up here, went to schools here, went off in the world and made his fortune in the financial industry. Spent a lot of time here and overseas. Was town manager once before. Well, he was very heavily involved here in trying to help manage. He didn't have any power to do so. He did it all by sticking his nose into it, probably in a place where they thought it didn't belong, but we all thought he was very helpful, and trying to manage this education budget, 65% of our budget, and get it to be more efficient, like people have been talking about for 20 years, but never being able to make it happen. But tonight I'm going to hand out the letter that Wayne Dove wrote to the Torrington Register on Saturday, April 2nd, 2011, concerning the exorbitant education budget that has been submitted to the selectmen for approval. Maybe they're going to make a decision on that tonight. I read this letter to you in its entirety during the program last week. I was so impressed with this letter. But in fact, the letter wasn't too much different than the apples to apples comparison that I made on my program a few weeks ago. Pretty much the same. We came pretty much to the same conclusion. Because my information kind of came the same way that his did. So now you're going to see a little apples to apples slide. The bottom line is that Wayne did an apples to apples comparison, like I did, of the pre and post 7th and 8th grade move budgets, because they're in question right now. We're going to be cutting, we were moving 7th and 8th grade to Gilbert to take advantage of their space and overhead they had up there. That building on the 100-acre campus they have was built to house about 850 students when we used to have all the regional students attending here up until the mid to late 50s. Last year it had about 350 students in it. So Selectman Fracasso and the other wise members campaigned to move 7th and 8th grade up to Gilbert to absorb their overhead, as we like to do in business, and reduce their cost per student. And a lot of people in town, including some of the majority in the present administration, were fighting that. Not overtly, but politically and very quietly behind the scenes, getting other people to do their dirty work. And as a result, instead of going down, the Board of Education budget went up by $1,100,000 or so. Instead of going down by $1,100,000 or $1,000,000 to $600,000 or so. Now, Gilbert themselves have done a good job on this because they got the cost per average student down by $3,000 a student. And if you multiply that times the number of students, you get about $1.5 million. So in Dove's letter, he points out, which I'm not going to read it all tonight because I read it last week, but I will give it to the selectmen tonight. Some may have already seen it. But he says apples to apples. Apples to apples mean you don't include any new raises and things like that. You just compare this year to last year with the move. And Wayne Dove's letter points out there's about a $2 million budget swing there. They want $1.1 million more for the educational budget, maybe plus or minus. It changes every day. And they should be coming in $1.6 million or so less because of the move. When you move the students to Gilbert and you move the teachers to Gilbert, in theory, you move the money with them. And then Gilbert is decreasing their costs tremendously by absorbing their overhead that they have, much too much. By the way, we can still move another 250 students up there, maybe 200, maybe 150, but that's quite a bit. That's why I encourage them to go out and become a regional school, get some more people up there to help defray the costs. But anyway, that's Wayne Dove's thing. So I'm going to remind the selectmen of that tonight. I'll give them the letter and I'll talk to them about this $2 million swing. And now I will show you a budget slide, which I'll explain, because I'm going to do this tonight at the meeting. I hope you can read it. Tonight I will remind the Board of Selectmen of the $2 million swing in the education budget and ask them to do several things, which are good management, financial management practice in good times and in bad times. Right now we're in bad times, all of us. The first thing I'll remind them is this is a very good time for a zero tax increase. Very good time. because it's very difficult now for people to absorb. We had a revaluation which forced a lot of prices up. People are selling their houses left and right, trying to get out of here. They don't need to get hit with another tax increase. So I'm going to recommend that they have a zero tax increase. And as you know, I don't usually get involved in making these recommendations. But we're in trouble here, and we need to take control. The Board of Education has copped out on this. They should have managed this, and they should have presented to the selectmen a responsible, more responsible budget. But when I attend all their meetings, which I do quite a bit, or watch them on TV, they don't see themselves as having any responsibility to the taxpayers. They just see themselves as having responsibility for the education of the children. So the tough financial decisions like this year, they pass it up to the Board of Finance, which is the Board of Selectmen as well. They let them do the dirty work. They wash their hands of any tough financial decisions. Then the selectmen can be blamed if we don't have enough money to educate the children. Now, in actual fact, and I want to make this very clear, everybody's in favor of educating the children. I have an education. My family members have an education. Most of them have master's degrees. My friends have educations. Not that everybody needs one. You need good tradespeople as well. You need all kinds of people in this world. So we're in favor of that. But it should be done efficiently. It should be done in a way that we get the most for the children and the most for the taxpayers at the same time. So I'll recommend the zero tax increase, which I very seldom do. But I think now is the time to fish or cut bait, to make some decisions in the Finance Board. And when you see the rest of these proposals I'm making, you'll see how we can go from being in terrible, dire financial shape with a $300,000 or plus or minus in the fund balance and a Moody's credit rating that has recently dropped to being in pretty good shape financially. But it takes a hard, tough decisions. So the next decision I will make is to cut, recommendation I will make is to cut the school requested budget by at least $2,700,000. But to put them even with the last year minus the savings garnered by moving 7th and 8th grades to Gilbert. So in effect, comparing apples and apples, they'll be where they were last year. And they'll have to deal with all the issues that this budget cut will bring to them. They can't just keep promising raises to teachers and increases to other places when it's difficult to get money. I don't have a problem with the teachers making good money. I think they should. That's why I'm always in the position of trying to get more revenue into town, which some people in the majority here, this administration, don't agree with. They want to spend before they earn. I want to earn before we spend, just like I did in my life. I was taught by my mother and various people along the way. I'm thankful for that now. There were no handouts in our family. You had to work for what you got. And you didn't spend before you earned. So we need this cut. $2,700,000. And then the next recommendation I'm going to make is to present a case to the state for reducing the minimum education budget requirement, if there is one. There's some question about that. People keep talking about one, but when you go to try to find out what it is, that isn't easy. It's up in the air. It's got to be pinned down. So our town, led by the town manager and the Finance Board and the Board of Education all together, one for all for one, need to go to the state and tell them that we're cutting out a school, our number of students is going down, and we need to have a reduction in the minimum education budget requirement mandate that we get from the state, with penalties if we don't stick with it. So we just can't have the state telling us spend more, spend more, spend more when we can't. And when we're cutting out a school to be more efficient, and we're losing students left and right, probably more after a lot of these people sell their houses in town. And we got to come to grips with that. We got to fight our way through this state bureaucracy. And since the Democrats are in control of the state and the Fed and the town of Winsted, maybe they can get us a reduction on this minimum education budget requirement, because they can't seem to get us much more money. The next thing I'm going to recommend is that we put the $250,000 that the education people overran last year, that we took out of the fund balance, and it was used as a political weapon against the last administration. I'm suggesting to the selectmen tonight that we put that $250,000 that we used to pay last year's overrun by the Board of Education back into the fund balance where it belongs. Bringing the fund balance back to around $600,000 or so. Now, is that enough? No, it's not enough. Moody's thinks we should have about $1.5 million in there, in the fund balance. So my next suggestion will be to the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen tonight, mainly the Board of Finance, some of whom don't know much about finance, some who do. I'm going to recommend tonight that they put in an additional $1 million that they get from the $2.7 million that they cut, and they put it into the fund balance. And that'll give us a total of $1.6 million in the fund balance, and that's sure to please Moody's and everybody else, especially people that are going to want to bring their businesses, factories, or residential developments to our town. Now, if for some reason we can't talk the state out of the minimum education budget requirement, or if the amount of money we get from the state is reduced, we're being told now by the governor that it will be the same, but he's in deep trouble because he can't get his $1 billion a year agreed in cuts at the state level, so anything could happen there over the next 6 months. But then we would have $1.6 million in our fund balance to fall back on if indeed it was necessary. But it's not easy to get money out of the fund balance. There would have to be some procedure so that everybody didn't try to rob the fund balance for things that probably weren't worthy. So it has to be watched very carefully. But we'd be in better shape, wouldn't we? So we need now to come to grips with this financial problem once and for all. Now, the next thing I'm going to recommend them tonight is that they increase the town side of the budget by about $500,000. The meetings I attended over the last few weeks, they were moving in that direction, agreeing 10 more thousand for this, 20 more thousand for that, 50 more thousand for that. So I'm going to recommend that we increase the town side of the budget by $500,000 because they've been getting starved over the years by all the money going into the educational side and not wisely spent. Now, this $500,000 will allow the town manager, and by the way, there's been a lot of micromanaging this town manager during this budget process. A lot of micromanagement. They shouldn't be doing that. They should be just saying to the town manager, okay, here's what you get. Now go figure out how to spend it the best for the town. That's what you are, town manager, the CEO. You figure out how to spend it. Don't listen to George Clausen. Don't listen to Candy Perez. Don't listen to a lot of the people there. Take their advice, talk to them in your office, and then make your own decision. And I'm pretty sure Paul Vayer has done that, but yet they're still monkeying with his budget. There have been rumors in the past that some of these select people actually ask the town managers to fire people. Well, that's a no-no according to our charter. You can't do that. You can't micromanage the town manager. You could ask him. You can suggest to him. And so far, thanks to the town managers, they have not fallen into those pressures. They just left the job instead. That doesn't help us any. We don't want that happening. So I'm going to ask him tonight not to micromanage the new town manager. Let's keep him here. He wants to be here 10 years. If he's good, let's keep him here 10 years. Let's not try to do his job for him when we don't have the skills, perhaps, that he does. So I'm going to ask them to allow the town manager to add sales and grant writing capacity, which Paul Vayer wants to do anyway. A full-time secretary, which Paul Vayer wanted to do as well, in the area where Scott Eisenlohr is now. We have a nice lady there, but she's split between two very demanding departments. And it's tough there, too, because both of her bosses are out on the road a lot, out in the field. They're not there all the time to discuss things with her and help her, and she helped them. And to expand the acting planner's position to cover P&Z, planning and zoning, day-to-day activities, and to increase the priority and effort to increase the recurring profitable tax base and get more jobs into Winston. I'm going to bring with me tonight a book of all the plans we have over the years that cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've never implemented. And now, Selectman Clausen wants to spend more money on planning. And my view is that's bad for the town, and he's not being helpful by doing that. I think his P&Z members probably agree because they come from a different stable. But what we need are sales. We need people to get out and make things happen, not to sit around desks putting stuff in computers. But to get out amongst the pigeons and get us more business, more industry, more profitable, recurring, additional tax revenue, more jobs into our town. If you don't think we need jobs, go stand on a corner down by Route 8 and Main Street and watch all the cars stream out in the morning and watch all the cars stream back in at 5 or 6 in the afternoon. There's an urban planning degree in the job advertisement for the planner and requirement. Has to go through civil service. I'm not a big fan of civil service. But I was told by Paul Vayer today that this urban planner, his vision of it is a young, energetic, let's get up and get the stuff done type of person. Not somebody who sits behind a desk and plans, but gets out and tries to sell the town, try to find prospects under the town manager's direction and with the EDC, Economic Development Commission chairman, and try to help sell the town and try to get more additional profitable recurring tax revenue and jobs into our town. So we need to emphasize the sales and the grant seeking experience, not exactly grant writing. There's a lot of people who can help write grants. We need the town manager and the salesman to put priorities on these efforts and then project manage them and make sure they get done by somebody somewhere. And they'll need a little money to do that, hence the $500,000, some of which, small amount, will be spent on this kind of an activity. The next thing I'm going to recommend tonight is that the town, finally takes over the maintenance of the 2 school buildings that will remain. And I'm suggesting to the Board of Finance and Selectmen that they put $250,000 into the town budget in addition to the $500,000 to maintain those 2 schools, get them squared away once and for all without having to put out a supplemental tax or raise the taxes, by spending some of the money that we're saving by moving 7th and 8th grade up to Gilbert. That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? We should all decide how the money's spent, not just the Board of Education. Come in and say we need $1 million more for all these reasons. They want to buy a plow truck for snow. We already got plow trucks. So there's a lot of things that we can do if we have control. The town has control over the maintenance of the school buildings. This has been talked about for years, never happened. But if we have control over it, then the Board of Education won't be able to take it and use it for other things. It's like the money for books. It always disappears during the course of the year, so we still got all the old books. Gilbert has put money in their new budget for new books for the 7th and 8th graders. It's another benefit that we have here. And it shouldn't cost us any more money because we're saving that $3,000 per student by going to Gilbert in the first place. Now, I'm also going to recommend tonight that we prepare for tougher times to come. And they can come in 2 ways, if not more. One, if the governor doesn't get his budget cuts that he wants, his concessions from the unions and all those things he's trying to get the $1 billion a year for the next 2 years from, that could mean tougher times for us because he's going to have to cut the money he gives to us. And the other way things can get tougher, and you know, we learned a lesson here already in the last few years from the recession. And as much as we don't want it to happen, this could be a double dip recession. And there might be another dip yet to come. You know how high gas prices are now, although they've started to come down the last couple of days. Supply and demand will affect some of that. Competition, other parts of it. But that could cause us another problem in the future. And wouldn't it be nice to have a $1.6 million fund balance to help us get through that? Remember, I told you all the towns that I know of in cities have had to rob their fund balance to get through this last recession. And their fund balances have dropped, just like ours has. Not everybody's, but a lot of people's. Some politicians try to take advantage of this and blame it on the last administration. Well, the last administration was there when the recession occurred and the crash happened. They had no other choice. They weren't about to come out with an additional taxing for that. Same when the school administration overran by $250,000 last year. They had to take that from the fund balance because it's very difficult now to go out for additional tax money. And it's often used as a political football by those trying to remain or get into power. So what can they do? They can merge the computer systems, like we always say, and even John Gauger wants to do that, merge the computer systems in the town and the schools into one system over time to allow efficient running. Have one full-time superintendent. Now they got 2 half-time superintendents. I don't even think they got the second one yet. They're both looking for superintendents for their schools. But let's get one. Now's the time. Why look for 2 half-times when you really need 1 full-time? Makes no sense at all from a business point of view. That's like sending your kid to 1 college and paying for 2. You'd say to yourself, why do we have to pay for the second one? We're only sending the kid to 1 college. Well, we need 1 superintendent. Not only will that save us, but that'll help us run a more efficient school systems because we'll have 1 man or 1 woman making all the decisions. And if we have a strong finance board, we should be able to keep them on track. And that's the only way it's going to happen. They need a shock. They need to be woken up because they just keep asking for more and more and more and more and more and more and more. As Joe Kydrain said, always said they would. He was on the Board of Education. We need 1 finance department. We made a change to our charter, but we haven't really done anything about it. Some small things are happening, but nothing like we need. We need our finance department involved, as close to that as allowed by law. And we need a monthly review of the educational expenditures by the finance board and the town finance director with the Board of Education, and we need to take action when we see things going awry. I think some improvements have been made in that area, but we've got a long way to go. Totally irresponsible for, at this time in our development, when we're trying to downsize, to ask for 1.1 million more. If they do this, all these things I recommend, we may be back on our feet and ready for a double-dip recession or better things to come. This will help the new town manager and the EDC, the new reinvigorated EDC, in their efforts to sell the town to prospective new businesses, industry, and other things that will attract revenue and jobs to the town. And not only that, but U.S. citizens will be very proud to live in this town as it becomes more financially responsible. Thank you. See you next week.